Love this podcast? Give us a 5-star review or rate us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. It can really help us make more great content like this episode and get it out to a wider audience.
What I did, and I'd done this many times but deleted it, by the way, is I put a post on, I think it was Instagram, but it wasn't like, by the way, everyone, I'm living with depression. I just put a post up about mental illness, and I think I might have written something like me too. But this time I didn't delete it. I did turn my phone off though and hide under the duvet for about 5 hours.
Welcome to Another Door podcast. Another Door is a place that you come to when you're rethinking your work, whether it's job loss, a career change, or you just want to rethink how you are doing your work right now. Come and find us at anotherdoor.co.uk. With me on the episode today is Sharron Moffatt, who is a mental health first aider trainer and talks a lot about depression, as she calls it, the elephant in the room. I've followed her for a while on LinkedIn. I really enjoy how she talks about it. She's very engaging. And I saw her post a message about a new platform called Jack and took one of those moments of why not just approach her and see if she fancies jumping on the podcast. Now, if you're listening and you have a podcast or you have something that you want to approach people and you hesitate because you're a bit worried they might say no, we all go through this. Everybody does. But my advice to you is don't worry about that. All they can say is no, and that's fine, and you just move on, or they ignore you. Again, fine, move on. I took the leap. I approached Sharron and she said yes. And within a couple of days, we jumped on, and it's turned into a really important message, maybe. We're talking about depression and anxiety. We are talking before Christmas. You might be listening and it's now, Christmas is long gone, but we're talking in the run up to Christmas. So it feels very important to get that message out there. So listen to the podcast. Would love to know what you think. Enjoy our conversation. Sharron, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been really cool because I saw you post something on LinkedIn that we will maybe touch on. And I thought, I've been following you for ages, like a couple of years. Suddenly I thought, right, I'm going to just go for it and see if there's a chance you might could get on the podcast, and here you are. So that's nice. You've been following me. Not in a weird way. I mean, that sounds odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. I feel really privileged that people actually notice me on a sea of LinkedIn profiles.
Yeah.
So thank you.
For people who don't follow you in a good way, maybe quick intro.
So I'm Sharron Moffatt with 2 R's in Sharron. And I will say that I'd love to tell you it's because Sharron is French for princess. But actually, my dad just spelled their name wrong on the birth certificate. So, we like to be different in my household. So I'm Sharron, and I am a personal trainer, have been for the last 30 years, but I'm also a mental health first aid instructor or mental health trainer. So I do host a lot of webinars, guest speaking, and train people to become essential mental health first aiders.
Love that. Love it. Right. And we're going to get into all of that. So before we do, I always like to ask people about their another door moment. So it can be anything, but just maybe share with us to get us warmed up your another door moment.
Okay. I've got 2. Can I give you 2?
Do it.
One of them's a bit more fun than the other one. So if the first one, probably a more serious one, we go for serious first, is I am living with depression and anxiety, right? I have been since I was 11. And I think I spent 40 years of my life looking desperately for a reason why I felt the way I did. Why me? And when I say why me, I don't mean as in it's not fair. I meant like, why do I experience this when someone else doesn't? I didn't understand why. So I spent a long time searching, which probably was the wrong thing for me. It's not wrong for everybody, but for me it was. So that door closed and a new door opened with such a sense of relief and welcome that I wasn't expecting. And that was when I started looking at ways I could help myself just 40 day. So I focused solely on that rather than integrating that with why. So that's the first one.
Love that. Do you remember the moment that happened?
Yeah, I do. I was having something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a form of therapy where it's about changing your thought processes. And none of that therapy goes up on your past, right? So it's not like, well, let's explore why then. And they deep dive it. It's almost like they're looking for things to blame maybe or reasons why. And I was introduced something called the 5-minute rule. Game changer. And the 5-minute rule is, say, for example, you know you need to do something or you have something urgent that needs doing, like, because most of us are procrastinators about something, right? But when you're living with depression, the hardest thing sometimes is actually getting out of bed to the point where it would almost feel impossible. So the 5-minute rule was just get up for 5 minutes. Just get up. That's all you have to do. Get up. And if after 5 minutes that feels so unbearable, then you can go back to bed. There's no loss. Yeah. But even if you get up for five minutes or even 2 minutes, that's more than you would have done otherwise. And that's progress. And you can work with that. But the chances are, once you start something, you've broken the hurdle, right? So you're more likely to continue. And that, for me, was a massive game changer. And I use it every day. And back then, I was in a real crisis point about 10 years ago. And it was like, for me, it was like, right, I can work with that. Today, I'm just going to get out of bed and I'm going to try and brush my teeth. Which for anybody that perhaps hasn't experienced a mental illness, it really is. It feels physically like flu. It can feel you can feel physically drained too. And I would just build on that. And slowly it progressed to the point where I could really start to focus on getting back to my normal true self. So yeah, game changer.
That's incredible. And that 5 minute piece, you can really see how that could work.
Use it all the time. Tax returns coming up at like 1st of January.
God. That'll take more than 5 minutes.
I know, but just log on to Government Gateway. That's what you got to do. Now, once you do it, you probably start.
Just get on with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay. So I've got so many questions in just what you said there, but I also want to hear your second.
Right. Second one. Well, it wasn't really a door closing. It was definitely a new door opening.
Yeah.
And I woke up one day, as you do, and I thought, I'm going to get a dog. And my sister said, I think you need to think about this. You really need to. And I said, I don't. I live on my own. I'm self-employed, so I go home in the afternoons. You know, I've got time. I think I'm going to get a dog. So I walked into Battersea and said, I want a dog. I don't care what dog.
It's as if
yeah, I think staffies are ugly. That's what I said. Shush, we won't tell my dog here. And I said, I thought staffies were ugly. I didn't mind what type of dog. And all the dogs there at the time were lurchers, which I adore. But I was currently living in a flat and I thought, a lurcher might be a bit big. I'll go with whatever they suggest. And there weren't really any dogs they felt would be suitable. So as I was walking out, I saw this fat, depressed staffy in their office with his head down. And I said, oh, he's sweet. Is he your resident? And they went, well, no, not really. But he's been here 3 years. So we just keep him in the office. And I said, I'll take him. And I took him home. And it's not the dog I've got here now, but I took him home. And he was the absolute love of my life. And I had him for 1.5 years. And he changed my life. He gave me a purpose that I didn't know I had. He showed me forgiveness, unconditional love. And it was just the biggest joy in my life. And then when he died, as a lot of your listeners who maybe have had lost pets will say, I'm never doing it again. It's too heartbreaking. And then Battersea rang me up about my adorable another staffy, Smoky Chops. No, I have here now. He's 13.5. Wow. And it's been the best experience of my life. I absolutely love it, even though on occasion, you know, they bark and they get on your nerves. yeah, he's the best. They're the best thing. Oh, that was it wasn't really a door closing, but it was absolutely opening.
I love it. And the fact that he's showing you absolutely no interest during that chat is amazing.
He's asleep. He's 14. He's asleep. That's all they do, sleep. If he'd have come online maybe 20 minutes ago, it might have been a different story. He was barking his head off. But yeah, it's just such a joy. I absolutely love it.
Love that. And all of the dog owners and pet owners will be completely agreeing with you with all of that, I'm sure. Let's get on to how are we here? How are we chatting? You posted about a new platform that you're part of. And then I looked at what you were talking about on the new platform called, I might get this wrong, Jack, that's it. So it's not JAQ, it's called Jack. Is that right?
It's called Jack, JAAQ, just ask a question. And I need to just make it clear, I'm not directly involved, but I did go to the launch and I know a lot of the Jack team, and I never see competition in anything to do with well-being. So I was more than happy to shout their praises. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm not on the platform, but one day, I will be one day, I'm sure. But it's just incredible. And Just Ask a Question is basically, I think, a game changer in the mental health and well-being space, because so many of us have questions that we feel we can't ask because we don't want to offend somebody. Or, for example, if you were to Google what is depression, you will get maybe 30 million results. And the first one that would likely come up is the NHS. So you click on the NHS, you scroll down, it's pages. So for a lot of people, you've lost them already.
Yeah.
So the Jack platform is trying to make it so it's user-friendly. So it's like the Netflix, really, of platforms. So you can just click on it, find a creator, answer a question. And, my friend Isaac's on there. And he's a wheelchair user, and some of the questions for him are perhaps maybe a bit nosy, but they're questions maybe some people do want to ask, but they feel they can't, like, how do you get dressed? How do you use the toilet? Do you wish that you didn't have a disability? And it's the fact that people can answer those questions with honesty, I think, opens up doors to basically, as we mentioned earlier, Eleanor, get the elephant out of the room and open discussions and in the end, not only help people, but reduce stigma. So I'm just so grateful for it, if I'm honest, because I think if only it was around when I was growing up, and back then there was nothing, the internet didn't even exist. That's showing my age, isn't it?
I can be with you in that space. We're maybe a similar age, because my first job was selling the internet.
Oh, I'm way older than you then. The internet was not even a word.
It was, it was like on a disc, and you had to like load it on.
Yeah, and it went.
And that's it. You had to call people. Come on, try and sell the internet, which blows people's minds when you sort of tell the younger generation, I used to sell the internet. That's a really Pipex.
Oh, you're so old.
Are you looking for somebody to help you rethink your work? Are you looking for somebody who has got something to say, something different? Perhaps you're creating an event, you've got a conference coming up, and you're looking for speakers or workshops that really get people rethinking. Check out our platform with fresh new voices and people who've got something to say. Come and see us at recommended.anotherdoor.co.uk. With the, like what we were talking about, the mental health side, and as you say, the new Jack platform is everything about just asking questions and talking about it more. And that's what you're all about. And yes, they do have to get you on that platform, by the way, because you'd be amazing. But exactly, you've got it. Right, we'll start a campaign. Let's start a campaign to get you on the platform.
I'm sure it will happen.
Yeah,
I'm sure it will
definitely. But yes, your thing is the elephant in the room. And as you say, broaching it. How do people go around talking about anxiety, depression? And it's really interesting, because I think when you're in this space, we're both kind of in the same kind of space where we're talking about it all the time. We kind of get used to it. we think, it's kind of solved. Everyone's kind of fine about talking. No, it's not. You go back into a corporate space, or you're going back into community or even family and friends, and you realize people are still struggling. So how do you kind of go about broaching it and talking about this elephant in the room? How do people go about talking to people who they might think has got depression or experience it and want to talk to someone?
Yeah, that's a good question with possibly many. Be long. But I think the first thing first is, I think if you want to approach mental well-being within the workplace, for example, there has to be an element of psychological safety, doesn't there? So people feel able to show up as their true, authentic self, if you like, to be able to make mistakes, come up with ideas, maybe ask questions, or maybe say they don't agree with something without that fear of being judged, penalised, ridiculed, maybe even, dismissed, right? So creating a psychologically safe workplace is essential. When you are a leader, for example, when you are able to share your, I guess you could call it vulnerabilities, so you're able to be honest, but also show that, I might be struggling a bit today. I didn't sleep very well last night, but you know what? I'm grateful to be here and I'm shown up. And when just little things like that can actually make people think, oh, right, okay, so it's okay to say, do you know what, you're really knackered, but you're happy to be here. You're really struggling at the moment because Christmas is coming and you struggle with Christmas. But actually, that doesn't mean that you're unable to fulfill your role. And I think that's a massive thing. Because I think a lot of people would assume if you're living with, certainly when I was growing up, if you're living with depression and anxiety, the stigma attached to that was huge. And it was like the stereotype of someone with a mental illness would be, well, not me. And I think that's probably one of the reasons I'm very open about it, is I want people to see that, yes, you can, do you know what I mean? You can have a mental illness and still be successful. You can have a mental illness. I don't personally like to use the word illness, by the way, but we can go into that.
Yeah.
But, yes, I have a mental illness, but I can still show up and I can still do a good job.
Yeah.
Because and actually in opening up about my struggles, the relief was so incredible that it gave me more energy because I didn't have to hide it anymore. And that's exhausting, right?
Yeah.
It's really exhausting.
So how did you go about that? Because I can imagine you've described it there and you've made it sound really obvious and simple, but I'm now playing it out and you were shaking
my head.
Exactly. It's hard because you're so scared. It's, as you say, that psychological thing. You're trusting the people around you. They might be your team, they might be whoever they are. As you're sharing this, you're really being vulnerable. You're putting yourself in that space and there's no going back. Once you've shared, you can't go, oh, actually, change my mind. Can we just crack on? I'm all right. And so there's that leap of faith and connection and you are trusting that people are in that space and you're not. Because I've heard people say, oh my God, it's so awkward, so sharing, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help them.
As far as opening up, I was petrified because the warning signs were there, right? And to me, I thought it was so obvious. Actually, it was obvious, but people didn't realise that was why. To the point where actually I was called into an office in a gym I rented facilities from. I'd been there 20 years, by the way, never been called into the office once, ever. And I got called into the office and asked how I got on with the other trainers. And I was like, fine. And they were like, really? That's not what we heard. And they basically, I would say, unofficially disciplined me for being someone that wasn't a team player. I'd show up, didn't really look at anyone. I wouldn't sit in the staff room and chat with them. I'd get in and get out. But what they didn't realise is I was in a severe crisis point, but still showing up at work. And that very same day, I went home and the police were waiting outside my house because they'd been informed by my mental health team that they couldn't get hold of me and they wanted to check on my safety. And I absolutely broke down. And I think for me, that was probably the start of, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep lying. It's too draining and it's not actually helping my recovery. So what I did, and I'd done this many times, but deleted it, by the way, as I put a post on, I think it was Instagram, but it wasn't like, by the way, everyone, I'm living with depression. I just put a post up about mental illness, and I think I might have written something like "Me Too" or something like that.
Yeah.
But this time I didn't delete it. I did turn my phone off though and hide under the duvet for about 5 hours. And then when I turned my phone back on, full of regret, actually, I was like, oh no, no one's going to talk to me again. And the response was actually huge and positive. And the relief I felt was so unexpectedly overwhelming that I thought, what, I wish I'd done this sooner. So I do remember it. And then I guess I didn't really talk about it that much after that. And I think the first time I ever did an interview actually about my lived experience was only about 3 years ago. And that was with an incredible guy called Josh Connolly. It's amazing. And I did an interview with him, and I think probably showed it was the first time because I looked like a frightened rabbit in the headlines. I looked so serious in the video. And I look back now and think, oh, why is I so serious? But actually, A, it was quite an emotive interview, but B, I think in honesty, I was quite scared.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I'd ever gone that deep with going into my life. You know, childhood depression was horrendous. No one believed it existed. Teachers labelled me as naughty and lazy. The doctors just said that childhood depression didn't exist and I was basically attention seeking. But my parents knew, however they knew, I don't know, they knew something was wrong and they knew. And I remember my mum talking about depression. God knows how she knew though. So my mum never experienced anything like that. And eventually they took me to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, of which I only recently found out they paid for. However they got that money is beyond me, because we lived a very humble life. And it was a psychiatrist there called Dr. Lask. And I'll never forget his name because I hated him. Because no child wants to sit there in front of a psychiatrist behind a desk with a suit on with your parents.
Oh, God, yeah.
But I'm always grateful for him because he was the one that gave me that diagnosis. And in my medical notes, it actually said I was the worst case of childhood depression he'd ever come across. Now, I say this regularly, I don't believe that to be true. And actually, it's not true. But no one spoke about it.
Yeah.
No one spoke about it back then.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for him. But diagnosis isn't essential for everybody. But at that time, for me, it really was, because not only did it mean I was believed, but it meant that as a child, there may have been more opportunities to get support that really, again, didn't exist for children.
Yeah.
You know, like we were talking about the internet, there was no internet. I think my mum was handed a leaflet that was probably hand typed from Mind UK with some info about depression on it. And I honestly think that was it.
You said you felt like you were lying or hiding.
Hiding, not lying. Yeah, it was fine. Yeah. Yeah, it was the biggest. I mean, I'm no liar, which is why I couldn't believe no one thought it was obvious. I think they did think it was obvious, but they didn't. They thought it was because I was maybe just moody. I wasn't a moody person, but I'm very vibrant. So if suddenly I'm showing up at work, maybe a little bit losing a lot of weight, not so well kept, not giving people eye contact, talking a bit slower, all those are signs and symptoms of depression, but they didn't attribute it to that. They just thought I was a miserable old man. And rude, yeah.
That's it. There's characteristics,
but they wouldn't, and I didn't feel, when you know that people you work with are saying that about you wrongly, you're not then going to go, if I can say it, I want to take my own life, can you help me? You're not then going to go to them and say that.
Yeah.
Where I was at that particular point, that's exactly where I was at. And that after that meeting at work, I think I walked out of there and I literally fell on my knees because I thought there's nothing left for me now. The business that I've worked so hard to build up from the age of 18 was crumbling anyway, because as I said, no one wants to train with a miserable personal trainer. When I walked out of there, I just thought that was it. I really did.
and where to turn to, which I guess is why your work now is so important, because that's the very point of it. It's who to turn to, who to get the right support. So maybe let's talk a bit about that, the other side of it. And you train, as you say, mental health, first aid, and I'm guessing in organizations and businesses that kind of want to support it. So what are you seeing? What's kind of going on now in that space? Because we've seen a huge growth in it, but I'm really intrigued in what you're seeing. Is there big improvements? What are the challenges?
There are big improvements. And there is evidence to suggest that having mental health first aiders in the workplace works. There's loads, this is evidence. This is evidence-based stuff, right? This isn't made up. This is all evidence-based. The course is all...
It's not just a tick box then, because I think that's quite important. I think when I first saw it, it felt, I could feel, but, is this a tick box exercise?
Some of them are. Some of them are just questionnaires you do online, right? That's not going to get you anywhere. I deliver through Mental Health First Aid England, which is the only licensed provider of mental health first aid. And we're also the only provider of courses that are evidence-based, written by clinicians with guidance from those with lived experience. So, and I don't say that because it's what I teach it, because I believe it's the best, not the other way around. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like, here you go, come on a 2-day course, bye. Yes, it doesn't work like it does. I mean, I stay in contact with a lot of my people that have learnt with me, but we also have a lot of resources on the MHFA website. There's free webinars. We've just introduced an app, so people, mental health first aiders, can find resources on there. They can even talk to an expert if perhaps they've supported somebody and maybe not sure they've done the right thing. Or maybe they've supported somebody and they're struggling, because you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You need to support yourself. We've launched an app as well, which comes with that. So, it's not a case of here you go, bye. It really isn't.
Well, it's a huge responsibility, isn't it? Yeah. Or is it? I mean, that's maybe something, let's explore it.
Let's understand, though, that mental health first aid is voluntary. It's not something that you have to do. Yeah. So if somebody doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it. Equally, if somebody has done it and they think, actually, I'm struggling at the moment, I haven't got the capacity to this, they just, matter of fact, or even, not doing it physically, but they take their mental health first aid lanyard off. So, it's the point of a mental health first aider is we're here to support somebody to be able to get the appropriate professional help. Just like with physical first aid, if somebody breaks their leg, I know it's something that people always use, but if they did, not only, you can't tell them as a physical first aider, you've broken your leg. You're not able to diagnose. You can't as a mental health first aider. But what you can do is support that person, help reassure them and guide them to that help. So whether that's call an ambulance, so suggest they go to the doctor, whatever, it's exactly the same. But you know what? People don't want fixing, Eleanor. They don't. They just want to be heard. And we need to stop as a society, and I've done this so many times, is try and fix someone, because we can't do that. We're here to guide somebody towards getting that support, but also to let them know that you've heard them and that you understand and that you support them. And if I'd have had that maybe many times in my life, outside of my family, by the way, my family have always been amazing, then I truly believe that my struggles wouldn't have been so frequent. And when you desperately want to fix somebody, which I've always wanted to do, we don't learn listening skills at school. I mean, if you compare it to reading and writing, right, we spend about 12 to 13 years of our education learning to read. Throughout our whole educational time, we spent about 6 months learning to listen, which, let's face it, was in an assembly, right? Boring. One of the key components of being a good listener is silence. It feels uncomfortable. We need to get comfortable with silence, because silence, when you're listening to somebody, not only shows that you're giving them your time, you're not going to go like, get on with it, get away from me. You're giving them the time to think. and you're giving them that time to know that you're not going anywhere. And I think it's such a game changer. And like you said, it takes practice. It does. But we can all start practicing it now.
Yeah.
When we talk about language, right? So earlier I said I choose not to use the word illness. We can talk about that. But we get so worried about, am I saying the right thing? It's the same with race. You could say it the same with race. Am I saying the right thing so we don't say anything at all? And actually, when you're in a crisis moment supporting somebody, don't get focused on, am I doing the right thing? But in other contexts, that's when we can maybe learn a bit more. Yeah, what might be more appropriate? What might be more appropriate for that person? So I choose to say I am living with depression and anxiety, a mental health condition. I choose to say I'm living because I'm not suffering today.
Suffering is a big thing, isn't it?
I struggle. Yeah. I'm not suffering today. I choose not to say illness because I'm not ill today. So I choose to say I'm living because that's exactly what I'm doing with a mental health condition, which is the way I see it. But if you said to me, I'm suffering with depression and anxiety, that's your choice. I'm not going to take that away from you. But when I'm talking about somebody else, I'm not going to make that assumption that they're suffering. So I choose to say they are experiencing or they may be struggling. Now, some people will go, oh my gosh, Sharron, what a load of rubbish. Language, it's all a bit PC. Does it matter? It matters to the person. And it matters if you want to get that elephant out of the room, get people talking more, it matters.
Thank you so much, Sharron.
It's been such a joy.
Where can people find you? Obviously, I know because I
sit on my grey sofa. People can find me on LinkedIn. So Sharron with 2 R's, Moffatt, Moffatt. LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. Yeah. And on there you can find my website, drop me an email or a DM or whatever. And, you know, my door is always open to chat with people, to explore new things. And, you know, I think the more my message to anybody is don't be on your own. You aren't alone. And the more we can learn about this stuff and the more we can talk about it, the more we're going to push that damn massive elephant out the room.
Are you looking for somebody to help you rethink your work? Are you looking for somebody who has got something to say, something different? Perhaps you're creating an event, you've got a conference coming up, and you're looking for speakers or workshops that really get people rethinking. Check out our platform with fresh new voices and people who've got something to say. Come and see us at recommended.anotherdoor.co.uk. Love this podcast? Give us a 5-star review or rate us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. It can really help us make more great content like this episode and get it out to a wider audience.